right, welcome to this evening. My goal for this evening is to talk a little bit about pitching, what goes into your presentations, how they get structured, and how you do it to make them effective. This is fairly specific in that it is pitching for seed round funding or early entrepreneurship. This is not and is quite different for late stage. It's very different than if you're, say, pitching a bank or doing a sales call. This is very specific for generally you're talking to either funders like VCs or angels, and it's for a situation like this where there's a group. If you're meeting one-on-one, again, different thing, different situation. So first thing is to understand where this is used. Situation like this where you have about 2 minutes, there's a group, and the group is funders. Okay? Good, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to first introduce myself. My name is Robert Neivert. I am a venture partner at 500 Startups. 500 Startups is pretty much the most active seed investor in the world. We have 1,800 companies in portfolio. I myself have about 200 companies in my portfolio for myself and my team. I generally do B2B investing and have for quite a few years. Before that, I've been through 8 companies, 4 exits, and I'm very old, basically. And before that, I have 4 degrees, 2 engineering degrees from Stanford, an MBA, and a degree in mathematics and economics. So yeah, I'm really old. What I'd like to share with you today, and I'm going to make this specific point, there are many ways to do this. You know, when I started constructing this presentation, I thought, well, there's actually many ways. So I'm really going to talk about a template, but and then I'm specifically going to say, here's some variations on it. But in order to make sure you walk away with something useful, I'm going to stick with one example all the way through tonight, and then we'll maybe do some variations. The second thing, you are going to participate. By the end of this evening, I'm hoping that every single one of you will participate. So you might want to warm up your voices, la, 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 get ready, because it's not going to be that interesting if you just sit there. I'm going to have you come up and try things out and learn from it. If you don't participate, you learn a lot less. And really, you spent all this time and came through a hailstorm to get here, so might as well get something from it. All right? And I know the food's good, but probably not worth the hail. So let's get started. The first thing is the beginning or first slide that you're going to start with on almost all of these is a very simple slide. Usually it contains sort of your company logo, some basic information, and a tagline. Many entrepreneurs do this slide very quickly. They throw a few words and they move on. Actually, I'm going to point out this is actually a very important slide. And the reason is actually psychology. So I'm going to go to dating. You ready? How many of you have been out on a date? Let's see if you're paying attention. Or maybe your English skills aren't good. I don't know. How many of you have been out on a date? Come on, let's see the hands. Really? A bunch of you have never been out on a date before. Okay, I was just checking to see if your English skills are okay, because otherwise I'll slow down a bit here. When you first meet someone, I want you all to imagine you're on your first date, and you walk up and you meet that person for the first time. In about 3 seconds, you immediately make a decision, whether you like or to really dislike the person. Or you notice that you can't help it but make that very quick decision. That's normal. That's how the brain works. It decides fight or flight, is this a threat? It makes a very immediate decision. After that point, the brain does something called data bias. If you like the person, your brain will automatically start absorbing positive information. It'll look for the positives. If you don't like the person in the first few seconds, you look for the negative information, and you will remember the negative information. This data bias sticks around for quite a bit of time. Why do I bring that up? Your first slide. They're going to see your first slide, and they're going to make an immediate judgment. That's why it's important that you actually spend a fair amount of time on the first slide, and the first slide and the first things you're going to say are actually fairly important. You're going to spend a lot more time on this than most of the other slides. What you need to do is do a very quick, and you'll see it here, you'll notice we have some very nice graphics that make you feel happy, right? These are very nice, they're pleasant, it's a white background. This company, obviously, is about children or mothers or things like that. And there's a nice tagline, a mobile marketplace for moms. Here's your rule of thumb, about 7 words. You want a short, brief statement that tells approximately what your company does. Doesn't it have to be super precise? And the reason is this. Again, I want you all to imagine something. You ready? You're all venture capitalists, and you're sitting in this crowd, and it's demo day, and there's 40 companies that are going to come up here. You probably only invest in a small slice of those companies. So when this slide comes up, the first thing you decide is if you have any interest in this company at all. So it's important that your first few words here are approximately what your company does. So if it says, like, in this case, this is talking about a marketplace for moms, if I only invest in virtual reality, I know I'm not going to bother paying attention here. But the people who it is relevant to need to be able to look up and say, oh, okay, that's my area. So 7 words, brief summary, best you can. It uniquely describes your company versus your competitors. Best you can. There's not a lot of words here. But most importantly, it should be a simple concept to remember. I had a gentleman once present to me, and I kid you not, these words were actually printed on the page, something of the order of like a quantitative analysis of interchange and arbitrage using CPUs programmed in C+ to accommodate the optimization of the synergy of monetary transactions. I don't know what to make of that slide, except I never would have invested in that person. So a few words, make a key point. Describe your company best you can. And I'm not going to talk about this tonight, but part of this is also you as a product as far as how you speak. But for now, we're just going to stick to what goes on the slides and their content. All right? So normally a slide would say, normally you'd come up and you'd say, hi, I'm from TotSpot. I'm a mobile marketplace for moms. And we're going to help to make sure that you get the best clothing for your kids. You have a fairly good idea what I do now. It only took me a few seconds. Lastly, you know something else. I didn't introduce myself. All right, here's your first quiz question. Why didn't I introduce myself first? Any guesses? Yeah. So they don't know who you are unless you're famous. If you're famous, you introduce yourself first. Hi, I'm Bill Gates, because that matters. But if not, they want to know whether they want to pay attention to the company. They don't know you yet. So you normally introduce the topic first, and you then introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Robert Neivert. I'm the CEO. And then you can continue. But the first few seconds are important. It's that date again. The first few seconds, you're going to introduce the company best you can. All right? Next challenge. I'm going to pick a few of you. I want you to raise your hand. You can volunteer. If not, I will volunteer you. I would like to hear your company's tagline. How many people want to be brave and try? If not, I'm going to pick people. No one? No one? Ah, there we go. Come on up. Come here. This is bravery, by the way. It's also known as hustle, and it's a valuable asset for all entrepreneurs. You should aspire to be this brave. Ready? You want to try it?
Yeah.
Give us a try.
So I'm from Blue, an air quality... Oh, sorry.
No,
Let me rehearse.
Again. Quick tagline.
This is, I'm from Blue, an air quality improvement platform.
Good. So first, I'd like to thank her for coming up. So how many people think they have a pretty good idea what she does? Raise your hand. Okay, a few. That's a challenge. So the first thing is the clarity of it is I get a little bit of the idea, but I need a few more words there to tell what you're doing in that area. It's kind of broadish, all right? But an excellent idea. At least she put us in the proximate category. Who else wants to try? Come on, she set the thing. Ah, good, come on up. Remember, participation is, you're going to learn a lot more. Let's hear your tagline.
Hi. I'm from Frame My Life. We bring pictures to life.
Bring pictures to life. Awesome, thank you. All right, how many people think they know approximately what he does? Few. Come on, you be brave. Raise your hand. I'm not gonna attack you for it. A few. 1, 2, 3. About 5 or 6. Good. It's a bit of a broad one, right? There's a challenge in a few words to describe something that's somewhat unique. If I say bringing pictures to life, if I remember it, I can think of lots of applications that do that. So I'd add just a little bit more to it to say what's unique about it. Like we add pictures to life or cultural or pictures to life easily on your phone. Something to give me a little bit more definition on it. But that's the right idea. At least it put me in the right category. I want to do one more and then we're going to move on. All the way in the back. Come on up. Normally I'd play music for you to come down, but I'm a little unprepared for this evening. It was the hail. It broke all my music equipment. No, that's okay. That's okay. We were just hearing your tagline, and I'll cut you off.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm with Slang. We're an adaptive e-learning platform for learning specialized English.
All right, how many people think they have a pretty good idea what he was doing? Good. See, that's actually a good thing. Most people I could pretty much, maybe not exactly, but I have a pretty good idea what he's doing. So that sort of hits the reasonable category. That's all you want to accomplish in the beginning. That's the first gate the VC says. Are you in the category I invest in? That's what they want. So now we're about to move on to the second slide. Whew, lots of time on the first slide, huh? When you go to do a slide deck and you present, one of my first rules is Slides are not independent. You don't present the first slide, click, present the second slide. The slides are part of an overall story. For that reason, you'll do something called a transition from one slide to the other. So if I'm introducing, we bring photos to life, then I'm going to start the transition and start talking about the second slide before I click over to it. And I can prove, I prove how successful we are by, and then you bring up your second slide. The point is, when you do these pitches, they're actually stories. So here's my next challenge for you. How many people remember lots of details about the last math class you were in? Let's go. Raise your hand. One. All right. How many people remember the stories your parents read you as a child, little children's stories? How many people remember those? That was a lot longer ago, I hope. Why do you remember them? Because they're good stories. They have ideas, they have themes, they flow, they have they're easy to understand, they're simple. Pitches are stories. The simplicity of the story is important because if the VC doesn't remember it, they're not going to approach you. Oftentimes we talk about signal to noise. So your opening slide is very simple. It's a few words, an introduction of yourself, a tagline, and a transition line to the next part. The next part is traction. I'm going to put a little bit of an asterisk here. Many times, traction is almost always for 500 startups, our second slide. Most cases, it's after the problem solution slides, then traction. I'm going to present it here second, but remember the order might switch. So why do we put traction second? We're back to it. You're all VCs, you ready? You're all very big, powerful VCs. You own billion-dollar funds. You want to invest in me? No, sorry. So your first thing, your criteria is the product in your category. The second one is the product at the right stage? Traction tells them the stage you're at. Have you shipped a product? Are you earning revenue? How far along are you? Are you international? That's why traction is put second in many cases, because it allows the VC to quickly figure out if you're in the right stage. The first two statements, category and stage, are the two single biggest eliminators for a VC. Those are the two primary things they use to decide if they're going to have a conversation with you. So we recommend you put them both up front so they can know if you're important to them or not. If you're not, don't worry about it. Let them go back to their email and pull out their phones and text their friends, whatever it is they're doing, because they're not going to invest in you. But this allows a quick elimination. So that means if the right people are going to be paying attention, because they knew in the first 30 seconds that you're in their category. That's what matters. So we put traction second. Here are a bunch of rules. The first thing I'm going to talk about is what goes on the slide. Again, same thing, signal to noise. You're going to put only a few things on here. 3 numbers. Okay? Here's my next challenge to you. You ready? How many people can tell me why we say only 3 numbers instead of saying, say, 5? Why don't I have like a large number of statistics? 5, 6, 7. Yeah. Okay, here's an interesting fact for you. How many people have made a list? They're going to remember, they're going to go to the store. You're going to buy eggs or bread, whatever it is you buy at the store. You made a list, you get to the store and you go, oh crap, I forgot. What was on that list again? Here's an interesting note for you. If the list was 3 items or less, chances are it's very difficult to you remember it almost every single time. The brain handles 3 things really well. I'm not going to go through the long story of why, but it has very high retention for 3. Interesting note, has a very low retention for 4. And then it falls off quite a bit after 7. After 7, it's almost 0. It's almost impossible to remember a random list of more than 7 unless you're highly incentivized. So we oftentimes recommend to people to put 3 key metrics that really matter to your business and talk about them well, and don't cover the rest here. Okay? So 3 metrics. On the slide, you have usually a simple graph. You want to label it cleanly. You want to label it well. Try not to do all the graphics that PowerPoint likes to do, 3D and all these colors. They're just distractions. Nobody actually likes them, really. So don't bother. One exception, if you are a graphic house, if what you're selling is graphic services, you need to demonstrate them on these slides. Minus that, keep them simple. The VCs or investors really only care about the results, not what they look like. So in this case, there's a handful of metrics that are the most important. So now my next one to you. Which metrics do you pick? I'm going to survey you. Ready? what do you think, I'm going to raise your hand and tell me what you think the most important metric, tell me what your company is, and then tell me what you think the most important metric is for you. Come on, you're going to have to participate. If not, I'm going to call for volunteers. It's going to get ugly. You already participated, so I'm going to try someone new. I'm going to hand you the mic because we do have a camera here. Joe, come on up. I'm going to make you famous. You ready? He's famous. Everybody applaud for him because he came up. You ready? Come on. See? Awesome. All right.
Thanks.
Tell me what your company does and what metrics you think are important.
So I'm from Life. We bring pictures to life, but it was not that obvious. And we sell subscription. So I would say that the indicator that would like to follow is the growth in subscription we got monthly.
Okay, good. What do you think your second metric would be? Okay, good. So, revenues. So, revenues, money. So here's rules of thumb. It's very dependent on your product. Generally speaking, revenue is almost always the top. Growth rate is almost always the second. We earned $10,000 last month. We're growing at 20% month over month. That's the top tier. That's the most informative. In the case of something like this, though, churn might also be relevant. If they had very low churn, like everybody who bought the app stayed on the app, churn would generally be the third or fourth number. Churn, C-H-U-R-N, and it means the number of people that are leaving the app. See, if you sell a subscription month to month, if 90% of the people leave at the end of every month, it's very expensive to keep getting more users. But if 98% stay with you, you only need to get a few more to keep growing. Churn. So for an app like this, revenues, growth rates, churn rate. Those are probably the three. Who else wants to come up and try? Who has a company and you have some measure or metrics that you do? All right.
Hello. I'm from Orange Loops, and we help teams to communicate better and work better. And I think the first metric would be the amount of users that are active in the platform. And the second would be the retention, how many of them subscribe, but they keep using the application. And the third, probably be revenue.
Okay, good. Definitely similar concepts, right? Revenue, growth rate. One note, do you charge per user? Yes. So if you charge per user, the number of users is directly correlated to your revenue. With a very minor asterisk. Let's assume you charge per user and you could either charge $9 a user or $900 a user. You have different plans. Revenue is more relevant there because the number of users doesn't tell me that much. If your plans are very close to each other, $9, $12, then, or you only have one plan, the number of users is a perfectly good way of measuring it. But I actually care about user growth, month over month growth in that case of users. And lastly, similar to the concept of churn, he's saying basically how often are people using his app. This is also referred to as MAU or DAU, monthly active users or daily active users are highly relevant in that case as well. You had a question. You want to come up?
That's a question. How do you...
I think I don't bite. It's okay. Because you need a camera, so you have to hold the mic.
All right, don't worry. So the question would be, how do you call when you go from the free app to the paid app?
If you have, it's called freemium. You're doing a freemium model where you...
How do you call the metric when someone comes
right.
try the free app?
Got it. So there are, I'm going to make sure I've understood you. So there are two ways that this happens. Something called freemium model. Freemium model means that some users use the application for free and a small number pay for it. For example, most downloadable games in iOS, there's some free sections, and then you pay for it to go further or buy things or loot chests or whatever it is. These are referred to as freemium model. And something called a conversion rate, which is the percentage of users that pay, is one of the single most critical factors to the success. So conversion rate would go on here in that case. All right? So I'm going to summarize. What goes on this slide is, if you can, a graph. If you can't, 2 or 3 numbers, key numbers only, things like revenue and churn. Try to avoid something like vanity. A vanity is, we have 500,000 downloads. It's not really that relevant. What I really care about is if they're generating revenue and other things. Okay? Clarity, simple. I'm going to give 2 more notes on this. Avoid custom metrics. So here's a custom metric. Somebody says the metric is we have a 20% growth rate in users that click to the right side of the screen on Mondays. And I go, what? So I'm going to offer you this general insight. Anything that makes a VC think is bad for your financial health. We don't think. It has to be obvious or we're not going to get it. We like to pretend we're really smart, but the average VC intelligence is not any different than the average person. They'll smile and not say, oh, I know exactly what you mean. And really, I'm thinking, I have no idea what you're talking about. So keep it really simple. Don't do custom metrics. Don't do anything sophisticated. Try to use standards so they can quickly figure out whether you're a match for them. Okay? So that's what's on the slide. Let's hop to the next part. What do you say? What you actually say, and this is an important facet, again, signal to noise. You're going to talk about what's on there, the 3 or 4 metrics, and you're going to add some color as to why they're relevant. We have a 2% churn rate, and here's an example. We've worked a lot with designers. We've been very successful. That's how we achieved our 2% churn rate. This is called adding context. Numbers in themselves are useful, but putting them within the context of the story of your company, that's important for you to do as the speaker. So, for example, if you grew 10% this month and 30% the next month after that, if you simply say 10-30, that's okay. But if you say, we've really hit our stride and we figured out more effective marketing driving our growth from 10% to 30%. This is adding context and value. Okay? So that's your job as the speaker on this slide, is to add the context and the story of why it's relevant. I have a CTO. He's awesome. That's how we did this. Whatever it is. Okay? Now I'm going to pause. Any questions on what you do and talk about on traction slides? Okay. We're going to keep moving right along then. Let's go on to the next part. This is the third section is the problem solution. This is not one slide. This is usually several slides. And what the problem solution, aside from the fact this seems to be a little bit of a problem with my font on this computer, goes something like this. You, at this point, are going to describe the persona or the primary user and what their problem is. So this is Jen. She's having a problem with this. And you're going to go through her problem, him or her problem statement. In this case, I've chosen this young lady. And she connects with families experiencing pre-screening childcare. In her case, she's looking for childcare, and that's the problem that we're trying to solve here. So I want to describe her story. A couple of quick notes on how to do these types of stories. First, people are more convinced by an example story than they are by data. I know that sounds wrong, but that's the truth. Let me explain it this way. If I say, this is Jen, she's having a real problem finding health care because she's too rushed and it doesn't work on her phone and she can't. That's actually more convincing than saying there are 7 million people who need health care and can't find it. People relate to people better than they relate to data. There's a small percentage of the population, by the way, maybe 5% that are the other way. There are a small number of them, but we're really targeting the majority of people here. Here's the best way to do it. Is you're going to tell the story of this person and how bad their problem is and how terrible this is and how awful their life is before your product. And then the solution, you're going to explain why you really solved that problem for them. So 2 things. First one is called contrast. If you describe this person's, and I've had this, a gentleman gets up and he says, this is Jen, blah, blah, blah. She finds this really annoying, so I'm solving this problem. Here's the thing, the word annoying doesn't, I'm like, well, are people really going to pay for annoying? I mean, you need to understand that you have to create enough of a contrast between the problem and your solution that it looks like a big problem, that it's something people will pay for, that it's a large market, and that you are an order of magnitude more effective than anyone else at solving it, whatever that it is. So when you describe your problem solution, you need to make sure you are uniquely solving it, that you have a dramatically better, that it is a big, expensive problem, and that it is a large enough market that the person in the crowd who's listening thinks that that's large enough for them to invest in. The more money they want to invest, the bigger that market has to look. Okay? So here's an example. This is Jen. She's having a problem finding health care because nothing really works on her phone. So she downloads our app. She's now able to quickly find health care in a few seconds as she heads to work, and it's certified, etc. And now I get to use my metrics. That's why we're going at 30% month over month with almost less than 1% churn, is because it is effective and they can do it on their phone. I'm establishing what's called a unique value proposition. Unique value is a very important thing to establish here. If at the point where you present your problem, I can come up with competitors that can solve it, you're wasting your time. I have this all the time. Somebody presents to me this really great CRM solution, customer relationship management solution. And they present their problem, and I look at it and I say, Salesforce does that. They said, yeah, but we do it better. I'm like, meh. It should be a problem that I look at and go, wow, nobody else can do that. You control the problem statement. You've got control. So don't state something someone else can solve, for God's sakes. That's such a waste. Make sure you spend the time to understand your persona uniquely. Okay? If you can't come up with a problem that you uniquely are better at, you don't have a company. Okay? Yeah.
Just real quick, I'm glad you mentioned CRMs, because what's always confusing to me is every new year there actually is a new CRM that does get funded and actually does get customers. It's like you have Pipedrive, HubSpot, Agile. You could all say that there's Salesforce, but they actually end up getting traction and building businesses.
Yep. But those decks don't say that. Their problem statement is not CRM. HubSpot is a classic example. I'll use HubSpot. They went in and they offered it for free. They're not trying to make money on it. Their entire statement of getting to the CRM was, we're going to give this away so that people will buy our marketing automation product that's associated to it. So their targeting statement, their problem was, I don't give a shit if you can call them on the sales, you can't actually email them effectively. That's the problem. The problem is not the CRM. Pipedrive, the same thing. They made a very clear case of time spent maintaining and managing and the cost of managing Salesforce, which, by the way, is in the tens of thousands of dollars a month for an average implementation. So their statement is not CRM. Their statement is cost of overhead is too high.
So just sorry to dwell on it, but so their deck would be, their slide would essentially be like Salesforce sucks because of these reasons. And
their statement would be Salesforce is inappropriate for small companies because the overhead is too high. We solve that problem by doing it with no administrative overhead.
So you could do a slide like this talking about one dominant product and how you're better?
Generally, it's not recommended to do it that way. We're doing that for the purpose of the fact that I'm standing here. Introducing a competitor like that is a maybe, but if there's something called elephant in the room, if any of you have a really big known competitor that sounds like you need to address them. Usually they're addressed on the problem solution or on the next slide, competitive slide. Depends on how you do it. We have quite a few of our companies that do specifically call out, if they're competing in Salesforce, they call out the big competitor, because if you don't, the VCs won't believe you. It has no relevance if they can't see the big competitor there. Okay? Questions on this one? Yeah. Come on up.
On companies that deal with health, that solve health problems, they usually put themselves as they have experienced the problem. Right. How do you see that as opposed to having another?
Got it. So personal story versus this is Jan, no, this is me. Personal stories outweigh generic stories. Generic stories outweigh data. It's in that order. Personal stories obviously matter, but I want to caution you about one thing. If you use a personal story, don't get lost in the story. So sometimes people who do personal stories spend like 7 minutes talking about themselves. They don't get off the topic effectively because they're used to talking to their friends about it. This is a pitch, not talking to your friends. So know how to do it concisely and stay on topic if you're going to cover yourself. Very common to see yourself on this. I'm going to cover this very briefly, and then I'm going to move on to the next piece. So problem solution, you should be stating a clear, unique problem of which you solve. Make sure it's a big enough problem, it's expensive enough, it's broad enough, and it's applicable enough. Okay? If not, there's no use to stating the problem. You should uniquely solve it, and you should solve it in a significantly better way than anyone else. You can state a competitor, if needed, if they're obvious. And there's a couple of little things, and I'll cover this at the very end if we have some time. There's a bunch of little subtleties to how you state certain things and talk about stories and things like that. But that's the general statement of problem solution. I'm going to make 2 specific notes here. Common problems. People put up screenshots. So here's my rule on screenshots. It should be dramatically simplified. Because the first thing you do when I put up a screenshot is they're going to try to read the screen. And if it's all kinds of text everywhere, and you're just trying to make a small point, you're wasting tons of time and it looks terrible. Generally speaking, screenshots are not good unless they're very nicely placed, nicely simplified, and well done. I'll give you an example. I'm going to go back a slide because I actually had one. In this case, this is the slide. You just get a general feel for this, but you know you can't read it. If that were bigger, people would try to read it, and that would take the attention away from the presenter and onto something too small, a very minor thing. Screenshots used selectively, specifically, make sure that you don't distract. I hate it when somebody throws up a problem like, or throws up a solution with a freaking login screen on a pitch. You're wasting my time. You need to edit it. It needs to be very, very appropriate for what you're talking about. Most of the time, there's only a handful of things up there. Okay? Generally, screens are not that useful. I prefer graphics. Okay?
Sorry for my English, but as a VC, you are talking about some unique value or a unique product that solves a huge problem for many, many, many people. But when you are listening someone who is talking about how you can recognize that this problem solution is not so big, or there are some little problems in the speech that can detect you some incongruence in the speak.
I'm not sure I understood the question.
When you're talking.
So you should be solving a large problem, but you're saying unique. I can't be both unique and a large problem. Yes. 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 Yep. Okay, so let's cover that briefly. As an average, so let's do my experience. So on average, I evaluate maybe 2,000 or 3,000 applicants a year. Probably 50 or 60 applicants all state they're solving the same problem. That's very common. We'll go through and we'll look at it, but an important distinction is if they state it generically and don't fill out any information, they give me nothing, then I toss the application. It's worthless to me. The better ones clearly state what particular one they're going after, usually a niche or competitive advantage. We haven't gotten to it, but your team might be your competitive advantage, your software might be a competitive advantage, or you're attacking it differently. Here's an example. Airbnb. Does everybody know what Airbnb is? Just real quick, everybody knows it? Okay. Airbnb, if you looked at their original thing, it looks just like a hotel, right? They're attacking the hotel business, but they chose to do it in a completely unique way. So the problem, if you imagine their problem solution, if I'm a VC, I'm looking at saying, your direct competitors, thousands of hotels who have billions of dollars of money to spend against you, how could you possibly defeat them? But what they presented clearly was that, no, we're going to go after a different market, people that wouldn't either buy those hotels or we're going to try to get it with a much better price or a different experience. They took a much larger market and demonstrated it had a sub-market that they could win on. And they demonstrated the characteristics they could win on. So they're attacking a very big market. Facebook, for those who know it, was not the leader, didn't start as social media. They were like the number 5th. They were like the 5th one. Tribe, UTribe, and a whole bunch of others, and was it My Time or something before that? Yet they won because they attacked it differently. They attacked it by using virality to get people to invite to friends much more effectively. So there are one of 5 ways you're going to win. You might have unique product, you might have unique technology, you lower cost structure, you might have better regulatory advantages, but you always have to have something to win. And that has to be here. That's your unique competitive advantage. If you can't present that here, then I'm going to discard it because you don't have one. But it could be, it doesn't have to always be a better technology. Many cases, it's a better team. You have a really highly qualified team, and it's much better than the other company. So given no other information, I'm going to bet on the team then. Make sense? And one note on attacking the market. Most startups attack initially a small niche of a larger market. They don't attack the whole market to begin with. Airbnb did not attack the global hotel industry in the first day. They attacked a very small niche and built up. What you do have to prove is that you can build up, that you're attacking a small part and that you will and can expand to the larger market. But you almost never attack a large market to begin with. It usually means that you don't understand how marketing works if you come up, and I've had people come up here and say, we're attacking a $7 trillion market. This is the presentation. And I'm like, okay, well, they're attacking a $7 trillion global market in something in a highly competitive industry. And I'm like, okay, you just don't know how to market, right? You just don't know how to target. That's not useful to me. Okay? It's a negative. All right? Problems and solutions. That's the next part. Hang on, I'm going to do a quick time check. 7:04. Okay, we still got plenty of time. Okay, what you say. One of the most important parts of this is to remember I talked about the story you read your kids. This is a story. If you're telling the story of John or Bob or Jose or whatever it is, you're going to need to tell the story in a nice, consistent way. Here's an interesting note for you. We remember, as humans, consistent stories, things that make sense. This is his problem, and it gets solved by this. If it makes sense to me, I'll remember it. If you have an inconsistency, so you say, this is Jose, he's suffering from cancer, and after he ran this marathon, you're thinking, wait, what? Inconsistencies cause us to really dislike something. So when you read your story out, have someone check it that it sounds and feels consistent. A lot of times entrepreneurs make this mistake because they jump topics and they forget to fill things in. They're so much an expert they forget what it is to be ignorant. Try it out on your mom. We do something called the mom test. You do your pitch in front of your mom and you do your tagline to your mom and you say, Mom, what do you think we do? And she says, oh, you're wonderful, dearie, don't worry. It's a bad tagline. If you give her the problem and solution and you say, can you tell me what you think this is and what you and you get these sort of answers like, well, I was a little confused. That's a bad story. And I say this because VCs don't have a large of attention span. They just don't. They don't listen really very well. They tend to be flaky. So it's a really simple story they'll retain. A complex one they tend not to. They just forget who you are. And they go somewhere else. A few exceptions. I had a gentleman get up one time and do a presentation, and it was literally a monstrous breakthrough. It was more than an order of magnitude, and it was ungodly price efficient for what he was doing. He could have presented almost anything, and he would have gotten funding. But he was also probably one of the 10 brightest people you're ever going to meet in your life. So, yeah, you know, you can get away without a good story, but it certainly helps the rest of us who are a little more normal. All right? All right. So you're going to tell a compelling, relevant, simple story that can be related to. And it's unique. Let's move on to the next part. So let's do a quick review. You've got your tagline. You've done your hello. You've done some metrics showing your growth, right? How fast you're growing, how much your revenue is, right? You've talked a little about the problem. This is Jack. He has this problem doing this. And then you talked about your solution, how you uniquely solve it. This is how we uniquely solve it. This is how we're going to service the market. Here's our unique competitive advantage. Let's go on to the next part. This is sort of a miscellaneous point here. Some cases there's a competitor slide here. These are things, the key point to this slide is to add something called validity. Validity works something like this. Walmart has selected me as a partner. That adds validity to my company. I have passed a government regulation. I have a bank that is willing to work with me if I'm a fintech company. This is called validity. You've just told them how you uniquely solve the problem. Now the next thing the VC thinks is, well, what about? They start thinking about how they're going to doubt you. And this adds to the validity of it. So you're looking for things that prove your company is successful, that you've achieved things, that you have key partners, that you're not just going to steal their money and go move to Guadalajara, I don't know where. But the point is this is the validity slide, and it goes about here. In some cases, you put traction here. But in most cases, you're going to put this kind of who your partners are. Also, if you have patents, a lot of times that goes here as well. Okay. Questions on this one? Okay, we're going to go on to the next piece. Team slide. Wow, this really killed my, my graphics. Okay, imagine this looks good. Okay, just imagine. I know, it takes a lot. Okay, so I'm going to talk about team slide now. Rules of thumb on the team slide. Nice, clear pictures, please. Okay. Question to the crowd. Why do I say nice, clear pictures, please? Why is it important that I can actually figure out who those people are? That was a hint. I'm going to start playing background music here if I don't get answers. Little crickets chirping. Okay, I'll give you a hint. What happens after the slide presentation? Usually there's an open thing. You have a table. You're going to be able to find her because you can see her picture. Here's the thing. A lot of times they're going to be walking around and they might even be looking for you. It's very nice if they actually know what you look like so they can find you in a crowd. They don't always walk around staring at people's name tags. You're not, and generally won't be standing at your booth. So having a nice clear picture is useful for being found in a crowd. It also helps with the human nature. People want to know, who they're looking for and who they're dealing with. There is some issues with this. I know there's some bias-related issues here, but nonetheless, you should put a picture clearly who you are so they can find you in the crowd. Oddly enough, you are presenting, so generally they're going to know what you look like, but a lot of times your co-founders are with you, and they're not going to know that unless they're on this slide. So nice, clean, clear pictures. Also, please make them professional in most cases, unless your company is like, I don't know, a humor or gag company or something like that. Nice, clean, professional, because it's representing you. Underneath, about 3 bullet points. Again, back to the 3 again. 3 key bullet points. Here's my one pet peeve. I see this all the time. People put bullet points underneath it like degree in philosophy. And I'm like, okay, well, that's the CTO. Why do I care he's got a degree in philosophy? Or the CEO puts things like, his fraternity underneath it. Unless you're at a fraternity meeting specifically for some reason, that's really not relevant. Think about the most relevant things that an investor cares about that would generate success of the company. So for example, if your CTO has a degree in computer science, that would be a good thing to list. If your CEO did an exit in the past, that is a very good thing to list. On the order of things that are important to a VC on this slide, the single most important factor is whether you've done an exit or not. The second most important factor is that you've done startups or not. The third most important factor is that you have some sort of vague background in your area, meaning you've worked for some company, some larger company, and done something in the area. The fourth one is generally education, with a few rare exceptions, and that's the CTO. Generally, the technical people, the education matters a little bit more. Really, they don't care that you went windsurfing in the Bahamas last week. So putting a big picture of you windsurfing in the Bahamas is not a positive in most cases, unless you're selling windsurfing equipment. Okay? Understand its context and relevance. So think about it from an outside point of view. It should look professional. It should add the value. Next, as the speaker, you're going to talk about key points. You don't have to cover everything on the slide, but you're going to talk about key points. I'm going to make one more statement to you. Be careful of unfounded assertions. You ready? Here's my first one. We are the best team in the Western world. You giggle. I hear this at least once a week. Be very careful about asserting like we are amazing, we're really good. This is just your opinion. If you can't back it with something, be careful. Here's a different one. You ready? We have an amazing engineering team. They've won 3 Nobel Prizes. Okay, there's some backing for that, right? Or they've done 2 exits in the past. Or they built the Airbnb infrastructure. If you're going to make an assertion, back it with something or don't make it. Quiz question. Why do you not make unfounded assertions? What's so bad about that? Good, but I'm going to point a very specific thing out. Almost. I'm looking for something slightly different. Also, definitely, there's also that, but it's slightly different. There's an expression in the VC world, once you doubt everything. Once I find a hole in your presentation, if it's your traction or your team or anything, once I see something that I doubt, everything comes under doubt. So let me give you an example of what I mean. You're all investors again. You ready? And someone comes to you and says something like, we have the best team. And you're thinking, I don't know if it's the best team, because you see a lot of teams, right? Now you think, well, maybe he's exaggerating that traction too. And maybe he's exaggerating his solution too. Once they think you're exaggerating or making things up, everything comes under doubt. If you ever interview with 500, you'll notice we purposely push hard to see how much you exaggerate your answers, because we then use that as a scale against all of your answers. So if, for example, and here's a common one, someone says, we know because you've typed into our form how much your revenue was, exactly. And we say, how much revenue? He says, we did about 2 million. We know from the form that you did about 1.1 million. So we know you're pretty much doubling the numbers here. Okay, so we're now applying that scale to all of your answers. We scale down everything. So don't give them doubt. Don't introduce it. That doesn't mean you can't say you're good at something. It just means be careful about over-claiming. Okay? We have some teams, especially from like South Korea, which are so humble, it's actually hard to figure out what they've done. I'm not saying go that far. I'm saying be very careful about overstating. Okay? Team slide, who covers? Generally, your founders are on the slide. Try to keep it to 3 people unless there's a real reason to go more. I'd rather see nice clear text, nice clean pictures, and their key achievements in the past. Again, I'm going to specifically flag if they've done exits. We have a couple of questions, so hang on. Let me just start here, because she doesn't ask a lot of questions. I'm going to give her some time. You want the mic? You don't have a question? You sure you don't have a question? Be sure. Come on. All right. All right.
I was just going to say, and this is kind of cheeky, how close do I have to be to an exit to put it on my profile?
So, I mean, I'll have to take a look at the exact situation, but here's the thing. They're going to check CB Insights or one of the other data sources. If you say you exited and it's not there, they're going to question it.
For example, I'm a sales director, but I don't have any equity, and if my company exits...
You could simply say, I was part of a company that exited. You just be accurate with the statement. You could still claim it. The statement basically goes that if someone checks a data source, that it agrees. That's basically all you want. So in that case, I might say something like, I was part of, what was the name of the company? Slack. So I was Slang. Okay, I was like, okay, great. That's a nice one for you. So yeah, you could say I was sales director at Slang and they were acquired. Okay. It's an accurate statement. Okay. There was one more question over here somewhere. Yep.
So if you already have some other investors that would be in the teams slide, or
if you have investors, you put them in. Good question. I forgot to mention that. Advisors and investors. So here's the rule of thumb. If you only have 2 minutes and it's a short pitch, generally you don't do advisors and investors unless they're very famous. Okay? Or if Bill Gates is one of your investors, you put him on here. But you probably don't need anyone then. But if they're not, then generally you leave them off. And here's why. They're not the key to success of the company. So for 2 minutes, it's too short. If you have longer, 5, 10 minutes, if you have longer, sometimes you'll add another slide after this called advisors and investors. Okay? But generally, those are not on the 2s, but there are on like the 7s and 10-minute pitches. Okay? Again, key things of why they're there. If they're an advisor, why did you pay for them to be there? It really looks funny if the advisor has the same last name as you, by the way. I do want to warn you on this one. So if it is not related to and they have the same last name, make sure you mention that, because we do see that a bit. I have a gentleman who has a company, and 2 of the 3 shareholders, basically, 2 of the 3 investors all have his last name. It looks funny. Yeah?
Hi. I have a very important question. What is to exit?
What is to exit? Okay, so an exit means it could be acquired, it could be an IPO or a public offering. It is any time at which the company has undergone a change of control or ownership. Okay. Generally, that means acquisition. Yep, not a problem. Other questions on Team Slide? All right. You're almost to the point where you can go enjoy the rest of the food. Almost there. Wow, that one's terrible. Okay. Don't ever design slides like this. It looks bad if your slides suck like this. Okay, don't do this. I just did this just so you know what not to do. This is an example of what not to do. Here we go. Okay, yeah. I'm perfect in my imperfection. Okay, on the closing slide. So now you've gone through the basic traction, the problem, right? Problem solution. You've a few miscellaneous slides. You might have talked about the competitors. You've talked about your team. Now we're going to talk about the last slide. The last slide is usually a summary. There's 2 types of last slides. One's a summary slide, and one's what's called a mic drop. Basically, you do one of 2 things. The summary slide goes like this. You tell them what you told them. Let me explain why. The first is your memory retention for any given event or pitch. Pitch, event, math class, reading session, whatever it was, dinner you had with your significant other, is extremely high in the very end. The highest memory retention is at the very end of an event. I want you to, and the second most highest is at the very beginning of the event, of whatever that is. That's the way memory works. It tags the beginnings and ends more heavily. So they'll have higher retention at the end. For this reason, you generally summarize your 3 key points at the very end, because that's where the high retention is. Also, since you're repeating what you've already said, it again increases the chance they're going to remember it. So at the very end, you oftentimes close up your story and do 3 key metrics or summaries. We're growing at 20, we have $1 million of annual revenue, we're growing at 20% month over month, and Mary is now happy and satisfied. There we go. Does that make sense? So that's a summary slide methodology. Question? Yes, because that's how memory works. All right, that's a quick quiz question for you. You ready? If you're driving and listening to commercials, and you're listening to the radio and you're listening to commercials, how many times do you have to hear a commercial before your memory actually stores and retains the information? 3? Huh? 7. Takes a lot of repetitions before the brain registers it. 3, you're not going to get through 7 repetitions, and people would get very annoyed at you if you did. But we want to have a few repetitions of the same thing so the brain feels familiarity to the information. Quick note for the way memory works. If you are familiar with something, you automatically assume it of quality and correctness. The brain can't tell the difference between familiarity and correctness in many cases. There isn't some, but in many cases it can't. So I want you to imagine what I mean by this. How many times you hear commercials, and you're very common, you hear, say, a milk commercial or an egg commercial. After you've heard it enough times, you sort of assume that the brand's pretty okay. Unless you have a very direct piece of information otherwise, your brain assumes familiarity is okay. We're basically building more familiarity with your key metrics and things we want you to retain and remember. So the traction I said, I'm going to repeat. Most likely I'm going to repeat that here. What I don't want to do is exactly repeat it. So if on the traction slide I said, we have $1 million of revenue, 20% growth, right, and 2% churn. I'm probably not going to repeat that exactly because then it feels like I'm repeating. But at the end, I'll come to a conclusion saying, and I'll come to the team. I've come off the team slide and I said, and this team was so good that we managed to accomplish that $1 million revenue, and we are continuing to grow at 20%. And not only do we have that churn, but Mary is really happy and satisfied now. I've mixed it into the story. It's similar but not exactly identical, but you have a higher retention for my metrics. Make sense? The second type of ending, so that's the first one called summary. The second type of ending is called mic drop, and this is when you have an amazing piece of information and you want to purposely end the presentation with that, and it's the one thing you expect them to remember about you. We have one company in this batch where I think the Rolling Stones bought their guitars. So he might end it with, and we're the guitar that the Rolling Stones buy. And that's like, you're like, wow, okay, that's something you're going to remember even when you leave this room. So I put it right at the end where it's retained, and now you know it. And then when you go up to me and walk up to me, you're probably going to say to me, oh yeah, the guitar that the Rolling Stones bought. You probably don't even remember the rest of my presentation. But that's okay. You remembered enough to come up and talk to me. Okay? There are a bunch of ways to do that subtly. It shouldn't be key information that they should want to pay attention to earlier. Like oftentimes metrics need to be presented earlier, or else they weren't listening. They weren't even listening at the end because they didn't think you were relevant. So normally mic drops are surprisingly good information, but not information necessary for the VC to have bothered listening to you. Okay? Questions on this one? Okay. Hang on one second. Quick time check.
But if you don't have that thing about the Rolling Stones, what can you say?
Find something. So the most common one is the summary of the most important things you want them to remember. Let's assume you're not shipping a product, you have no revenue, you have no Rolling Stones, you have nothing like that. Then your end might be the story. Mary is very satisfied, this accomplishes her goal. All you have is vision when you're very early, so that's what you're going to end with. But that's what you want them to remember, is that Mary has a childcare problem and you solve it. That's all I got, so that's what I'm going to get them to try to remember. You're just trying to remember the most important things about you that you want them to retain. Lastly, I'll point something out. If I give you a list of 10 or 20 items, throughout this presentation I've mentioned, let's say 25 points. If I don't control which one, you're going to remember a random one. By repeating key elements, I'm driving you to remember the key elements I want you to remember. If I just list 25 things, you'll randomly remember whichever one happens to occur to you. But if I repeat certain elements, your brain is going to get cued in that those are the important ones, and those are much more likely to be retained. That's why I want the most important and key elements to be repeated. Questions on this? Okay. All right. Lastly, cheat sheet. Now I get all the way to the end. I'm going to tell you this. You actually didn't have to pay attention to me even at all. The whole thing is on this bit.ly link in detail on a 5-page write-up. So I'll only point out to you, please be aware that bit.ly does have upper and lowercase characters. That's an L. It's like 1EL. If you go here, there is a 5-page document with everything I've said and then some, all listed out in a nice little outline form that you can make a copy of and place in your personal directories. So you could completely have ignored me for the last 60 minutes and still get the presentation. There you go. And with that, I think I'll close out and maybe we'll go to just an informal Q&A. How's that? Questions before we close? Okay. Come on up. Everybody give me a hand. Yay!
Hello. Well, that you talk about metrics, but historic metrics. Yes, my business have something, some market or some custom, but if you are developing something, you have to express this in the slides, or it's not important.
Okay, so let's do the example. You ready? You are all entrepreneurs. You've got this amazing idea. You've got a really great team together, but you haven't shipped the product yet. What is this deck? How does this deck look different? The beginning pitch line, the opening line looks very similar. Instead of traction, you're going to present a vision. This huge, you're going to move more to problem solution, talk about this huge problem and why it's not being met and how you're going to meet it and how your team is uniquely qualified to do so. And then the last thing is, if you possibly can, you're going to collect some information to prove it by saying, we went out and we talked to these 10 customers and they pre-ordered my product. 9 out of 10 of them pre-ordered my product for $10,000 each. This is called a proof point. You're trying to validate that what you're saying is true. And that's very common for a pre-revenue or pre-shipping company. Okay? It spends more time on team and more time on problem solution and more time on the overall vision. Okay? Good question, though. Other questions? You want to come up? He really just asked questions so he can get the limelight. Stand up here and talk.
What about explaining your business plan, how you started, where are you at, and how are you going to develop?
In a 2-minute pitch, you're generally not going to spend a lot of time. Oh, after the pitch. After the pitch. Then I recommend at least 3 tequilas, and then they'll listen. So let's talk a little bit about talking about the history. I'm going to pose a statement to you. Signal to noise again. Why is that relevant to the investor? And this is an important statement. A lot of times people share their histories, and sometimes those are 20 or 30-minute long discussions. So they have a 20-minute interview with me, and I ask them a first question, and they spend 20 minutes telling me about their history, and that's it. That's all the time I have. Here's the thing. It's not that valuable. There are occasional cases where it's very relevant, but think carefully about whether that's worth the airtime or not. Many cases, it's your motivation or reason why you're here, but you can express that quickly and then move on. Be very careful about the time you spend. So history, not so often. Business plan, I will tell you this, and I get, okay, I guess somebody's drying their hands. Okay, well, he's ready. Okay, here we go. I get 3 to 5 emails a day that say, our business plan. Okay, anybody want to guess what I do when I get that? I don't even open the email. Because here's the thing about a startup. You can't plan. And anybody who thinks they can is a risk to me. It doesn't mean you don't have one in your head. It doesn't mean you don't outline it. And it doesn't mean that there's not an occasional venture capitalist that will ask for it. And they do. They say, well, what's your 3-year plan? What we actually care about, though, is that you thought about it. What are the key factors? How are you going to react? Who the competitors are? What we actually care about is the thought process, because it's never going to pan. It's never going to work out that way. But if you didn't even think about it, that's a risk. So what I care about when I ask about that is, do you know your competitors? Do you know what you're going to do if it doesn't work? So I get answers. A good answer might be something like, we think we're going to go after this market for this reason because we think we've got a competitive advantage. And we did a survey, and we've got 5 pre-orders in that area. And if that doesn't work out, we have a bunch of other plans we might do. And they'll usually pause at that point and wait. And if I ask the question, well, what are your alternative plans? Then they'll follow on with that. If not, they'll stop. Because that's about as far as a seed company can look into the future. They haven't even shipped the product yet. I had a company that hadn't even shipped the product that talked to me, and I literally kid you not, a forecast graph for up to $100 million of revenue. And I'm like, I don't know how you can forecast that. And he actually said, he's like, this is absolutely just a done deal. That was his statement to me. And you know, I can never trust him. There's no statement he could make after that that I would ever trust. His name was Bill Gates. No, just kidding. But there are occasional people that does happen to, but life doesn't really work that way. There aren't linear. I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and I spend a lot of time working with them. And a lot of them get into this game thinking it's going to be a line, right? There's going to be this growth line. They're going to hit it, and it's going to go up like this. I've been in 8 companies. Anybody want to guess how many of those had a line like this? None. Not even close. It looked like a 3-year-old trying to draw. This was my line. It was all over the place. I had more catastrophes than I could count in the first year on most of them. Right? It's never a line. So those who believe it is, that's a risk to me, because you need to be prepared for the contingencies, not for the forecast. Yeah.
You don't talk about a person of participation in a company, or when you start to talk about numbers, the amount of money and the amount of person in the company.
Got it. Investing. So you'll do notice distinctively missing from this deck is what's called the ask. How much you're looking for, how much money, how long it's going. And there's an actual reason for that. In the United States, it is illegal for you to pitch a crowd and ask for money directly. It violates an SEC law. So you'll notice it is not present in this deck. Some countries it is legal to do so. When you go to the bit.ly link, because I know you all will, there is actually a section in red that talks about what you say if you are legally allowed to say so. And what that says is basically you normally mention the amount you're looking for, right? Approximately how you say, all right, we're looking for $1 million. You're going to mention who else is in the round. We have these 3 investors, so it's half filled. And we expect this to last us 18 months or till this given milestone. And in a later stage, not in seed, but in a later stage, you'll have a small graph to explain what areas it's going to go to, marketing and sales or product development. I left that out here because it's illegal in the US to do it. I'm going to let her ask a question, then I'll get to you. Why don't you just stay next to me? Why don't you just come up and just stay next to me? It's really save you some time walking back and forth. So,
so the VC will ask you naturally, like, I mean, when are you legally allowed to say?
Oh, yeah. So, again, I'm going to be very careful. I am not a lawyer. I don't know the law local here. Here's what the law is in the United States. As soon as someone comes up and asks you a question, you're allowed to answer it. This is called general solicitation. I've announced it to a crowd, and I haven't validated that you're an investor or an accredited investor, therefore I can't. But if you walk up to me and ask, I'm allowed to answer the question. I'm even allowed to, and this is the term in the United States, if we have a previous business relationship or they are family, you are still allowed to do it even in general. So if I've done business with all of you in the past, I'm still allowed to do it. But it's so tricky that we just avoid it because it's too problematic. So generally speaking, though, in one-on-one, you're perfectly fine to do so. Anybody who comes up and asks. Before you take their money, you need to validate they're an accredited investor. But you can have the conversation if they approach you, because it's not called general solicitation. Okay? Not to be confused with solicitation, which is prostitution. Stay away from that one. Come on, run. Let's go. Let's go. Get some exercise, man. Let's go. You've been sitting there all night. We got to cheer for him. You ready? Come on. Run faster. Come on. Woo! Here we go. He's going to jump. If he had fallen, that would have been much better.
That would have been much better. My question was, is there a way to sneak onto your deck what you would do with the capital without asking for it?
So you are allowed to say what you're going to spend it on. Like you can say, we plan to spend $1 million on here. The problem is, you don't really need to do that at this point. You're going to have that conversation anyway, and you want to do that in person because you want to ask a few questions before you answer that. Specifically, I'll give you an example. If the conversation is with a major venture firm, I'm probably going to increase the number that I'm asking for. If it's with a small angel, I might reduce the size of the round. I'm just going to adapt to the situation. So you are at an advantage not talking about it here. You're at a disadvantage trying to do it in a pitch like this. There are some cases where you need to do it, but generally we avoid it. And here's an exception. If what you're doing is a very specific competition or grants or the people or government people that are doing grants or something like that, or there's a specific amount to the grant, then oftentimes they're expecting for you to tell you what you're going to use the grant for. Special situation, not common, but does happen. Yep. Come on up.
When you're talking about if you have a technology, for example, that can be applied to many different industries, and you want to show potential because you don't know the crowd. Maybe you have a VC that's specialized in one industry and the other. How much do you talk about that and not sound unfocused? Like,
see if I've got your question. Let's assume a generic technology, and I'm going to use an example. You cut the cost of data storage in half. It could apply for almost everybody uses data storage, right? Normally what you do is you'll start off by saying, we're going to attack this specific market first, and I'm going to say, because data storage is most at premium in mobile phones, we're going to attack an end consumer selling them, doubling their storage, because they're the ones who are willing to pay the most. And then you can say, and under the problem solution, you can say, but we see that this will expand into the future in general. So oftentimes you pitch the specific statement that you're going to win at first, and then generalize it on the next slide to talk about the general market. But you always want to explain to them carefully what you're going to target first. Because if you're going to target the entire storage market everywhere in the world for all methodologies, they can't fund that. Unless they're SoftBank, they can't fund that. It takes too much. Good question. Does that answer it? Okay. More? Nope, you're thinking you're hungry. Nope, we got one more. We got one more person holding you back from food.
In your experience about the value of the startup, for example, when one startup comes and say, well, my value is 1 million and I give you 10%. What about the correlation in the numbers and the amount of money they are giving you?
Let's see if I got it. I think I got it. So are you asking how to set your valuation and how much money you're raising? Okay. That's sort of a topic in itself. I'm going to try to answer it, but I'm going to say specifically it's hard to answer that accurately in a minute. Instead, I'll phrase it this way. There is a lot of data on that. You can go out and see what people have raised at in their rounds, whether it's Crunchbase or Angel or a few others, so there's some background data. It's hard for me to get up here and give you a really good one, and let me give you a funny example of this. An associate of mine went out with 3 other guys, no product, and raised at a $45 million valuation for a product. Total disaster, by the way. Shut the company down a year later, returned about half the money. But he got the money at $45 million valuation. They were fairly famous people. They had done successful exits. That drove the valuation, not the product. It was them. They were famous. That's what drove it. A second friend of mine, not famous at all, very smart guys, were well connected, also raised at a fairly high valuation. The same idea with the same qualified people raised it dramatically less, like 4 mil valuation, like literally a quarter of it, just because they weren't as well connected. They couldn't get the meeting with the people that were going to fund it. Really hard to tell you. I will tell you though, spend the time and effort to understand what approximately the right number looks like, because if you come to a VC and you present a number that is ridiculous, it discredits like I said, once they doubt the rest. They think, oh my God, if he doesn't even know that, then he's really ignorant. So I would recommend spending a little bit of time to do a bit of research before you look at it. It's okay to be a little off, but if you're way off, it's bad. I was in Hong Kong and I had a young lady present to me. Her and a couple of her friends had this idea of this fashion company. I'm not fashion. I'm pretty sure you figured that out. And she pitched me, and they had a thing, and they had a small amount of revenue, maybe $100,000 US a year. And I said, okay, well, what are you trying to raise? And she went to raise $25 million raise on a $65 million valuation. And I looked at her and I said, well, I don't really understand how you're going to do that. That's just not within, that's just a ridiculous statement to me. She spent quite a bit of time attempting to do that. And it was a real waste of time. Because it was just a ridiculous statement. So she wasted a lot of time.
what if it happens the other way around? Like the VC values you higher than you think that you're worth?
It's a nice problem to have, I suppose. So normally, if it's a trained VC, he's not going to say anything. He's just going to take the lower valuation, right? So there's a funny trick. There's a funny, for those of you who follow economics and, ooh, hail. Wow, someone's trying to tell me to shut up. Wow. Yeah, get off the stage. How about we take a 10-minute break and I'll answer his question. I don't know how long this is going to last. I can talk over it, I guess. All right, I'll try to answer his question and then we'll take a break. So the answer goes something like this. There is a bias in game theory where you always go a little bit higher than you actually expect because if you're being a little optimistic, they'll bring you down a bit, but they'll never bring you up. If you ask for 7, they'll never bump you to 8. So if you think you want to do about 7, you actually ask for 8, and they'll talk you down to 7. Does that make sense? But if you ask for 20, they'll ignore you. Make sense? So you generally go a little bit high, but not a lot high. And the general answer is most VCs will not will bring you up. Exception, if you've done business with them a few times. My company, I pitched a bunch of VCs. We actually sat down, had a discussion, and raised the value based on that meeting. That's rare, though. That's because they were friends of mine, and they wanted to continue to do business with me in the long term. So it was valuable. But that's rare. All right? I think we're going to pause and maybe get some food and drink, and I'm going to stick around and answer questions best I can till 8:30, so I guess another 30 or 40 minutes of just open. All right? I recommend you wait till after the hail stops. All right? Hope you got something valuable from tonight.